What is up, guys, and welcome to a better late than never ranking of all of the movies that I saw last month, August 2023, of which I managed to see 7. Pretty much all new releases in theaters, not a whole lot of surprises in here, maybe aside from one little indie film. But yeah, needless to say, I won't dwell on this too long, but uploads have slowed down past couple of weeks. I've been dealing with some personal health issues. Don't really have any news at the moment. If and when I have news, I'll share it. Just been sick for a little bit, spent the night in the hospital, and it's been slow kind of getting back into the swing of things. So hopefully the uploads will start to get a little bit more regular. If they don't, then just know I'm dealing with something privately. So thank you for everybody that's been hanging out, checking on me, sending me messages and stuff. I appreciate it. With that said, we'll just go ahead and get right into it. And number 7 for the month of August, the movie that I enjoyed the least last month was the Meg to the Trench. And, I wasn't a big fan of the first film. I thought that it had potential to be some dumb fun, especially if they would have ramped up the gore to rated R and just really embraced what people actually go to shark movies for, at least what I imagine they go to shark movies for. That's what I go to shark movies for. And Meg 2, while I didn't necessarily have a lot of faith in it, the trailer at least made me think that they were embracing the dumb a little bit more. It looked like it was going to be bigger and zanier and crazier. And that got me a little bit excited. And when I finally saw the movie, unfortunately, everything that they advertised in the trailer for the most part is like the last 15 minutes of the movie. And the rest of the movie is just kind of meandering around, talking about underwater corporate espionage. And you've got a lot of ripoffs, pretty blatant ripoffs of other movies, with underwater being kind of one of the bigger victims. And just not really a whole lot of excitement going on for a big, dumb Jason Statham versus gigantic shark movie. The CGI was okay, and, nothing to write home about. But just overall, it's a movie that it just doesn't really capture what I feel like a movie like this should capture for entertainment value. If you're going to aim for the low-hanging fruit, then that's fine. But you better get a lot of low-hanging fruit, and it just didn't feel like they really did. So I can't say whether I like this one better than the first one or not. It's been years since I've seen the first one, but I can tell you I don't really particularly enjoy either one of them. And unless you're somebody that just absolutely adores shark movies, the lamer the better for you. It's not really a movie I can recommend to too many people. Now, starting at number 6, we got a couple of movies that I'm just kind of middle of the road on, not really a whole lot of passionate thoughts on. And number 6 is going to be The Passenger. This was an independent film that was released last month that I got a chance to check out a screener for a little bit early. And all I really knew about it was that it starred Kyle Gallner, who was in quite a few movies, horror movies in like the early 2000s, mid 2000s, and then kind of just went away. And here recently has been popping up in quite a few things. In Scream 5, he popped up in Smile, and he seems to have been a lot better with his acting and with the movies that he's been picking than he did earlier on in his career. So I've kind of had my eye on him a bit. And I checked out The Passenger, and it started off really interesting. There was a lot of promise there, and it kicked off at a point where I thought, wow, this is going to be one of the bigger surprises of the last couple of months, but it kind of petered out towards the end, unfortunately. So you basically have kind of a riff on the Hitcher here, to where Kyle Gallner is not really a stranger, but he's this kind of loner, and he works with this kid that doesn't really take charge of anything in his life and just kind of drifts through life and lets everybody walk all over him, doesn't really take charge of anything. And so he gives him a very violent shove into situations to where he is going to have to start making decisions and kind of man up. And it's an interesting premise. It's not 100% unique. We've seen it before. Like I said, very reminiscent of The Hitcher. But where the movie lost my interest is that I felt like Kyle Gallner's character, I think his name was Benson, his character was more interesting to me the less we knew about him. And as the movie progresses, they start to hint at and directly kind of tie in certain things to give him an explanation for why he is the way that he is. And the back half of the movie becomes much more about him becoming unhinged and just going off the rails, and the main character having to do things to stop him or subdue him. And it just didn't feel like that was the more interesting part of the movie. So it got less interesting to me as it went along, and I wasn't fully satisfied with the conclusion. It just something about the journey that we went on. It had a lot more promise early on than it ended up having it in the conclusion. So ended up being a film that I probably won't remember. Coming in at number 5 is going to be The Last Voyage of the Demeter, and this was one that I was really hoping for. I didn't even know anything about this movie, hadn't seen them advertise anything about it, hadn't seen them talk about it, didn't see a poster or a trailer, nothing, until I did a video a month or two ago about my most anticipated horror films for the fall, and people were like, where's Last Voyage of Demeter? I don't know, what the hell is that? And so I looked into it, didn't watch the trailer, because I typically don't with horror films, but I was like, a Dracula movie? A vampire movie? Like an old classic one? Oh, yes, please. And I felt the movie was pretty boring, unfortunately. It's basically taking a chapter out of Bram Stoker's novel where Dracula stows away on this ship, the Demeter, to get from Romania to England, I believe. Correct me if I'm wrong, but he's voyaging to continue his journey. And this whole movie is about that voyage, this ship that is out in the middle of the ocean that one by one at night people start to be picked off and the crew starts to realize there's some kind of a monster on board, and it's Dracula in his vampiric form. Totally animalistic Dracula the entire movie. And while I appreciated the classic approach, I think the movie was shot really well. There's some good performances there. I like the classic approach to vampirism especially, and I want more movies like that. It just felt like the movie was this long and it only had this much premise to hold it up. And so it becomes this wash, rinse, repeat cycle of nighttime comes, there's a bat-like silhouette figure in the background while somebody's doing their job at night. They get attacked the next morning. Everybody's like, where the hell's Jim? I don't know. Where is Jim? And so by the time you get to the third act, I mean, the movie opens up, and especially if you know the novel at all, it opens up basically telling you where things are going to end. And so when you don't have a really solid premise to hook you for what it's going to be a very predictable and locked-in storyline, I just felt like it lost my interest quite a bit after the first 30 or 40 minutes or so. It's like I'd seen everything the movie had to offer. And the big conclusion, the big showdown by the end is where you got a lot more CGI than you did the practical work. And the practical work is very good, but whenever it starts to lean on CGI, you'll also lose me a bit. So a lot of people I could see enjoying this more than I did. Just for me, what I wanted out of it, I got about this much, and there was still an hour and 15 minutes of movie left. Coming in at number 4 is going to be Strays, and this is the latest. Let's just do ultra raunchy comedy and just have a lot of swear words and a lot of gross out humor, because that's the only comedy we can do nowadays. So there was a decent amount of laughs here, I'll be honest. I think the voice work of Will Ferrell and Jamie Foxx was pretty good, and there was a couple of good laughs, especially if you're a dog owner. There's a lot of, kind of leaning into the dog humor here, obviously being that it's a movie based on talking dogs. But it's also one of those new age comedies that I feel like just replaces wit and replaces genuinely good writing with just, let's just say, fuck a lot. And, let's have a dog bite somebody's dick off and things like that. And just, I've really hated the way that comedy has gone over the last 7 to 10 years. It just feels like the comedies need to offend. Comedies need to push the envelope and be risky and say the things that out loud that we're all just kind of thinking in our heads has gone away and been restricted. And this is all we're left with is just sight gags and profanity. And so it was okay. It's not the worst comedy that I've seen in a long time. It's not the best. It's just one of those things that was a decent enough experience once. I'm not going to remember a single joke from the movie, but it is what it is. It's Strays happened. Now moving into the top 3, and we had a pretty solid top 3 this month. And coming in at number 3 was going to be Blue Beetle. And it's unfortunate that this movie was doomed for the longest time to be a gigantic box office bomb, and it absolutely fulfilled that destiny. This was originally going to be an HBO Max movie, and the people that were making it and the people at Warner Brothers said, you know what, this is pretty damn good. This actually is worthy of being on the big screen. And it is. But unfortunately, because of the decision to announce the James Gunn universe and the reboot, and we're cutting off all the current DC stuff, that has tragically affected all of the box office of all the remaining DC projects. I mean, you look at Shazam. I mean, Black Adam to a certain degree was a big disappointment. You look at The Flash, that was a disaster. And you looked at this and everybody just knew this was just doomed to fail, no matter how good it is. And unfortunately, it's one of the better things that DC has done in quite a while. I would say it's in the top 5 or 6 at least of the DCEU era. And to the point where I really do hope that James Gunn sticks to his word regardless of what money the movie made. And this character, this version, this casting of this character does show up in his new universe, because I really liked Blue Beetle. I had a good time with it. Is it reminiscent of a lot of other movies? Is it very kind of run-of-the-mill superhero in a lot of ways? Yes, which typically for me is the first sign of me checking out, because a lot of movies are just kind of the same in that genre. There was enough about it that made it unique that I actually enjoyed the unique aspects more than I focused on what was familiar about it. And what was familiar about it, I actually didn't even mind that much, because it reminded me a lot of the original Iron Man movie. Just simplistic origin story that's not bogged down and worried about the overall universe. We're not getting DC references and cameos and hints at all this stuff. It's just a movie focused on telling a good story about one character's journey and setting up a set of characters that hopefully we'll want to follow in further movies. And I do. I really liked what Xolo Maridueña brought to the role, and I've been rooting for him since Cobra Kai. I liked his family with George Lopez and everybody, bringing that Latino culture into there. I thought was a lot of fun. There was a lot of things that I picked up on. There was certain things that I did not, that I could tell if you're, Latino, there's probably a lot of great jokes in here. There was one with Vapor Rub that was obviously very good, but I just didn't get the joke. Action was pretty solid. CGI was pretty solid. So yeah, this one, for somebody that has been absolutely burnt out on comic book films for the past couple of years, this is one that I've enjoyed. I enjoyed much more than I thought I was going to. Coming in at number 2 is going to be Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles Mutant Mayhem. And I wasn't sure what to expect with this one. I had faith in it because of the people involved, but I'm somebody that I've wanted a really good, solid live-action Ninja Turtles movie ever since the 90s, those first 2 films that are still the best, in my opinion. The Michael Bay movies didn't quite get there. They had promise, but they made a lot of mistakes. So the fact that they went back to animated, I was like, I don't know. Like, you guys know me, I'm not the biggest fan of animation, but I was curious about it. And, I really enjoyed it. It was one of the better things that I've seen out of the Ninja Turtles universe in quite a long time. I really liked the animation style. It was unique, but it had like a modern CGI mixed with old school hand-drawn kind of look that I really thought was neat. The voice acting, for the most part, was all really good. I felt like Donatello and Michelangelo felt a little swapped to me, but other than that, everybody else was pretty damn solid. Ice Cube was a lot of fun as Superfly. Jackie Chan was great as Master Splinter. A lot of really solid humor in here that was both appealing to kids as well as adults. And I think they did a really good job of setting up a new era of Ninja Turtles that they've already announced is going to be followed by not only another movie, but also a Paramount Plus series. And there was just certain things done that I could see leading to another film, while also being able to do like a 10, 12 episode series in between that. And it would make sense. So I'm looking forward to seeing what they're going to do with this. There was a couple of things with them trying to do something different that I can appreciate, but as an old school Ninja Turtles fan, there was a couple of things they did with a few characters, namely the villains, that I didn't love. I won't get too specific, just the fate of certain characters and how bad certain classic villains are in this film, which is a couple of them aren't so bad, where I was like, I don't think they're supposed to be a friend of the Turtles, but we'll see where this is going. But I had a good time with it. I took both my daughters to it. They really enjoyed it. I look forward to it popping up on one of these streaming services so I can check it out again. So for somebody that it takes a lot for me to really get into an animated film, I got into this one. But coming in at number 1 is going to be Gran Turismo, one of the bigger surprises of the year so far. I really didn't care about this one. I had seen everybody losing their minds whenever they announced this at like one of the Sony conferences, and I had heard that Neil Blomkamp was directing it. That kind of piqued my interest a little bit. But I'm not a Gran Turismo person. I'm not a racing person, so there wasn't really anything drawing me into this. But I went to go check it out, and aside from being riddled with quite a few sports movie cliches, that was its biggest negative. Aside from that, if you can get past that, I thought it was a damn good story, because this isn't really a video game adaptation, even though it's kind of cheating and saying that it is. It's really just telling a true story that about this academy of these video gamers that were like kick-ass Gran Turismo players that got a chance to actually become real racers, and one of them triumphed and actually went the full distance. That's who the movie's based on, and that's just a really cool story. That's a good, solid story that has its own built-in inspiration, especially if you're a video game fan and there's certain things about it that you've always kind of gotten shit from your parents or whatever. We can all kind of sympathize with that to a degree. That's part of this character's journey. It was just a really well-directed racing movie. Like, Neil Blomkamp really showed up in this one. There's some cool stylistic visual stuff that bleeds in from the video game world into the real world and vice versa. That was a nice touch. Some PlayStation signature sounds. That was a nice touch. But even just if you don't notice any of that and it's just a racing movie, it was really well directed, really well choreographed. There's some pretty intense sequences, intense crashes. So, and I think that David Harbour was a damn good character too. He's always kind of somebody ever since Stranger Things, he's popped up in different genres here and there, and he can pretty much do a little bit of everything, but he's a really charming, charismatic guy. And him kind of playing the hard-edged coach that starts to endear himself to the underdog. It was, again, a little cliche, but I really enjoyed it. So Gran Turismo, I would have never expected to be one of my favorite movies of the year, but it's on track to be in that top 10 because I really enjoyed this one. As somebody who's not a big Gran Turismo fan and not really a big racing fan, I liked it a lot. So I can only imagine what racing and Gran Turismo fans thought of this. Well, that's it for this one, guys. I hope you enjoyed that. Please like and share and hit that subscribe button so you don't miss everything in the future. Please, if you enjoyed this, check out my review of Gran Turismo, and I'm also going to put my playlist of the 2023 movies I've reviewed so far. And as always, remember, opinions are like assholes, but that doesn't mean you have to be.